how are you feeling about this Kentucky Derby field overall?
Journalism, who's the favorite, he feels like so far he's kind of a head and shoulders above the rest of the group. I think the group is solid. It doesn't seem like we have a few horses who have run those incredibly fast races yet. Per example, only 2 horses in this field have run a Beyer speed figure of 100 or above. So, when you're looking through, you have a lot of horses that don't necessarily have the fastest ratings in the world. So that might mean, Erik, that this is like a solid group. Maybe it's a group that's like a little later developing. Maybe we'll see them start to get a little faster as the year goes on. But as of right now, not necessarily an overwhelming group on speed figures. They're more of like an evenly matched group. I think once you get beyond what journalism has done, they're all pretty closely matched.
Now, looking at the way the prep season has gone, what stands out to you most about this year's crop?
So what it looked like up until about a month or two ago, a lot of these horses that were going to qualify for the Derby, they weren't very fast early on. There were like a lot more of the closers and like deeper runners. And then Neo Equus qualified and he's got some speed. You had Rodriguez, who won the Wood Memorial. He's got some speed. American Promise, he won the Virginia Derby. He has some speed. And what I mean by that is they have early speed. That's kind of their running style. They're front runners early in the race. So just about a month or two ago, Erik, it looked like most of the field were horses that were kind of mid-pack or deeper closers. But in the last round of preps, East Avenue, he finished second. He might be the fastest horse in this whole field. So it does seem like the race got a lot faster with that last round of prep races and some of the horses who qualified. Owen Almighty is another one. His connections initially said they didn't think he was going to run in the Kentucky Derby. They weren't sure if he wanted to go this far. But then after his really good race in the Tampa Bay Derby, they changed their minds and now he's going to be in here. So I think that was what kind of struck me. A lot of the horses who either changed their plans or qualified at the end, they're front runners. And I think we could have a pretty fair and pretty fast, honest early pace.
Now, you mentioned the favorite journalism. Morning line favorite, drew the 8 post. Historically, 9 horses have won from that gate. Is there any world where journalism does not win?
Yeah. I mean, if the races were run in like a smaller field, it was a little more fair circumstances, then I think we could be even more confident about journalism. But we got to remember 20-horse field, right? So, I mean, a step or two out of the gate, and that's not great. And he's behind horses and he gets stuck in some traffic. It could be pretty tough for him. What might be a little bit different for him too, Erik, when you're looking at the past performances I'm looking at, it shows you in his last 3 races, he's only been in fields of 5. So he hasn't had to face a bunch of other horses. He's now going to be in a field of 20. So there's going to be things happening a little bit different in this race than in a couple of the others. Now, all that being said, he got the perfect draw. I think if the trainer was able to pick, hey, where would you have wanted your horse to draw? They probably would have said 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Somewhere in the middle, right there. So you're not down on the inside, but you're not hooked way out wide. As a gambler, I very rarely am going to bet the favorite in the Derby. And he's probably going to be 2-1, 5-2. But I don't really have very many knocks on him overall, Erik. Like, he's not a horse who I'm going to throw out. I have him picked second when I made my selections, and I'm going to use him in all of my pick 4s and pick 5s. I'm going to use him in my exacta and my try bets. But I wouldn't look at him as a horse I would want to bet to win, because I just think there are too many other horses that are kind of fun that are just going to be way better prices. And there's always a chance that a horse like Journalism in this race gets stuck in some traffic, has some trouble, things just go a little bit wrong. So I'm usually going to bet to win maybe some bigger prices in the Derby.
Journalism has never been passed from behind.
Yep.
But with so much early speed drawn to the inside, Could we see that first quarter just be lightning, him go early?
Absolutely.
Sandman or East Avenue catch him from behind. Like,
So
how can I bet to save myself from that happening? You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely. So what you're pointing out is really important, because down towards the way that the horses drew in this race could impact their running styles. So like Citizen Bull, he's the number 1 post. He has really no choice. He kind of has to try to go as fast as he can early, because if he doesn't, he could get stuck behind all the other horses to his outside. And then you're in traffic, you're in trouble. So he's got to go. The 2, Neo Equus, he has to go. The number 4, Rodriguez, he's really quick. I think he's going to be trying to get out of the gate fast. And the 5, American Promise, he's also very quick. So 4 of the faster horses in this field are all down on towards the inside. Even Admire Daytona, he showed some speed in his last race. Then you add on top of that East Avenue, who's one of the faster horses. Those horses all pushing each other, they could set up for the horses you're talking about, like Sandman, like Sovereignty. Those would be the 2 that would most likely benefit if things got crazy early on. And there's all these horses going fast, and then journalism has to move early. And he gets kind of sucked up into that, right? Because he's down there on the inside and he's not far off of all of them. Then it sets up for probably the best of the closers. And I think those horses would be Sandman and Sovereignty. I would prefer Sovereignty of the 2 of them. I think Sovereignty doesn't have to be quite as far back as Sandman. I think he can be a little bit closer. And another major positive, Sovereignty already has a win at Churchill Downs. So we know he likes this track. He ran last year at Churchill and he won there last year. So those would be a couple of the horses that are the opposite. They're not going to be up front early. They're going to be towards the back. But if you see a lot of horses battling it out early on, that means really good things for horses like Sovereignty and for Sandman.
Now, a couple years ago, CJ Stroud and the Texans were hosting the Browns, and the comment I made to you was, are we going to look back and say, wow, we got CJ Stroud at a pick-em price in a playoff game? So I'm going to ask you this question with journalism. Are we going to look Sunday morning and say, wow, we had 3-1 on journalism? What a gift.
You know what? It's funny. I know the popular thing would be to say, well, no, because we might. We honestly might. Like, that's a short-ish price for the Derby. But based on what he's done so far, if everything were to line up on even terms, I think his A game is just much better than everybody else's A game. The reason why it's a trickier call is because in the Derby, you don't always get a fair shake because there's so many horses in there. A lot of times it doesn't even matter who the best horse is. It just matters who got a fair trip. Who was the horse who was able to stay inside when everybody else had to go wide, something like that. So he does seem just so much more capable of like being a Triple Crown winner than I think most of the horses in this field, because he's not one-dimensional, Erik. Like, we were talking about some of the fast horses early, but the problem for them, they may go too fast early. Horses like Sandman and Sovereignty, they may be too far back and have to come closing and run really well, but finish second or third. Journalism just seems and feels the most likely that he can adapt to different types of races. Like, if the way this race were to be really fast or really slow, he just feels like he could be in a good spot almost all the way around the track.
Now, if he wins impressively, could we be looking at another Triple Crown winner?
Yeah, because especially what happens in nowadays, at least the first 2 races, because you don't get a lot of these horses that come back and run in the Preakness. Because if you don't win the Derby, then you'll take some time off and you won't run back in 2 weeks. You'll wait, and maybe you just run back in 5 weeks and you run in the Belmont or in a different race then. So it makes it a little bit harder to win the Belmont, because sometimes you'll get horses that are a little fresher, horses that ran in the Derby, that didn't run in the Preakness, and then they come back in the Belmont. But if he were to win the Derby, that for him would be the hardest of the three. For some horses, you wonder about like getting the distance of the Belmont. That won't be as difficult for him this year because the Belmont will again be at Saratoga. We won't have as long of a Belmont, but distance, I don't think is a problem for him. I just think if he gets in trouble, that's more of the issue for him. He seems like he's the one where if everybody got a fair shake and if everything went the same, he has the best chance of winning the Triple Crown. So yeah, I think him winning, he would be a heavy favorite at the Preakness, and he really wouldn't have too much to worry about distance-wise in the Belmont. So, again, we're saying a lot of positive about him because I don't really have very many knocks on him, and I picked him second. Like, I think he's going to be really, really tough. I think he's going to run a great race.
Now, I was talking to our friend Dan about Baffert. He's back from the suspension, has 2 runners. The Wood Memorial winner, Rodriguez, and Citizen Bull, last year's 2-year-old champion. Both horses have some serious question marks whether they can pass horses or not.
Absolutely. And because they're both...
either one of them like a real contender in this?
So I think of the 2 of them, Rodriguez... I'm way more interested in. And of all of the speed horses that we talked about, I like Rodriguez the best of those speed horses. I feel like he could either be like the fastest of those speed horses, but really in kind of mapping it out in my head, the more and more we look at it, what's cool, Erik, there's a tool when you're looking at the Daily Racing Form past performances. It's called the Timeform US Pace Projector. And it shows you how they think the race could set up, right? So they have East Avenue and Owen Almighty up front, Neo Equus right there, and then they've got Citizen Bull, Rodriguez, and American Promise kind of all in that top group. And I think that's kind of accurate. I kind of agree with how they have it mapped out. So for me, Erik, the horse who could maybe get the best trip is the 4 of the speed horses, Rodriguez. Can Rodriguez maybe let Citizen Bull go, let Neo Equus go? And can he try to be sitting like right behind them? Because he's faster than Final Gambit. If he gets a trip like that, I think he could run really well in this race. And maybe he kind of saves ground on the rail to where he's just behind the leaders, not necessarily right on the front, so he's not battling with the other horses. He's kind of saving ground behind them. Of the Bafferts and of all of the speed horses, I think this guy has the highest upside. I think this guy has a chance to either win the battle of the speeds or maybe get the best trip sitting just behind some of the others. He's going to be in the mix in a lot of ways for me.
Now, this is one question our buddy Dan wanted me to ask you. Out of principle, do I have to play a Baffert Oates Derby double?
Oh, just because Baffert's back now, he, as one of the best, is going to want to really try to win the race. So that would be throwing in Tenma.
Yes.
From the Kentucky Oaks, the number 9, and then one of the Baffert horses here.
Or you can throw in both. Just do Tenma and then
the Baffert, the 2 Bafferts here.
Rodriguez.
I mean Tenma is 12-1 on the morning line, and Rodriguez is 12-1 on the morning line. What I will say is, you almost feel like kind of what you're talking about. It's almost worth a few bucks just because they're going to be such big prices compared to the normal Baffert horses, right? When we're talking about the Bafferts, they're usually the favorites or one of the top betting favorites. And we could be looking at a double digit horses in the Oaks and the Derby for Baffert. I like Rodriguez, I would say, of those 3. I think Rodriguez's chances of winning the Derby are probably kind of comparable to Tenma's chances of winning the Oaks. I didn't love her last race, and I'm a little concerned with Tenma, like kind of what we were talking about journalism, Erik. Tenma has been running in California in small fields. So she's been able to kind of beat up on other fields. She only faced 2 other horses. She was in a field of 3 and like fields of 5. So Tenma's going to be now in a field of 14. I'm a little concerned that she just might not have things so easy. Things might go a little more difficult for her in that race. And I'm not quite as high on Citizen Bull, certainly on Rodriguez. And that double would only cost you like $4, right? And it would pay back very, very well. So if you like these horses a little bit better than me, that Baffert Oaks Derby double might not be a bad one, Dan. Maybe you toss a few bucks on there.
With the early speed drawn to the inside, when you handicap this, what do you think the early pace is going to be like? What fractions are we going to be looking at?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fast. I think we're talking like sub 47. I think we're in like 46 and 1, 46 and 2. That wouldn't shock me at all, because a lot of these horses are capable of going really fast. Look at a horse like Neo Equus in some of his races. He was on the lead in races where they went like 45.61. You see Citizen Bull. That's why I'm a little bit worried about him. He hasn't had to work quite as hard to get the lead, and they may be going a lot faster in here. Look at what American Promise did in his last start. He went 45.20 to the half mile to get the lead in his race. That's flying. So I'm expecting them to be really quick. The horses who I'm looking at, Erik, who I think could benefit most, are the horses that have the running style like Journalism. But one of the horses who I think has a running style like Journalism, that's just going to be a way better price to bet, is Grande, the 10. He will be kind of close in the mix. He'll be in the top half of the field early on, so he won't have to pass as many horses. And I think he can be sitting, like if you look at the projector that we have here, where the Timeform US projector has the 10, I'd love to see the 10 in that spot, like right behind that group of those speed horses who are going to be flying, and maybe getting the jump on some of the other deeper closers. And he could kind of be a horse who falls into a good spot. Because you do want to, just because they go really, really fast doesn't necessarily mean you want to bet the horse that's going to be dead last early, right? Because that horse still will have a lot to do. They'll have to pass a lot of horses. They'll have traffic. They could get stuck in some trouble. I'm always looking for horses who I know can kind of put themselves in a good spot, have a little versatility, but then can also finish.
Now, after the post draw, were there any horses you immediately tossed or like, look, where they are, they have no chance. I'm not even going to bother with them. I'm just tossing them. Or flip side, oh, wow, East Avenue. I like where he's at, right? I think with how he runs, he got a good post draw. I'm just using that horse as an example because you mentioned him earlier. And was there any horses like that?
He's the one that you pointing out. Of the speed horses, he got a great draw, because really, when you look at East Avenue, the only horse that's to the outside of him that's really fast is Owen Almighty. And why I mentioned that's a point, because when you're running, it's way easier to be on the outside if you're a fast horse, because then you can kind of look to the inside of you and see what those horses are doing. And you can have some options. You can make a decision, like if you want to go faster, if you have to, you know that those horses are to the inside of you. When you're inside of horses, you're kind of forced by what the horses to the outside of you are doing. Because if they're going a little faster than you, you have to try to work hard to keep up with them, because you don't want them to get in front of you and cross over on you, because then you kind of get stuck behind. So I think for East Avenue, he's in a really nice spot, because most of the other really fast horses are to his inside. He could kind of look over, and Manny Franco could get a sense of, okay, I got to go a little faster now if I want to try to get in front of them. It's a lot of the horses down to the inside that I think were hurt by the draw, Erik, especially like the 1 and the 2, because they really don't have many options. Like they just have to go. And then to the outside, the 20, like he's probably going to be hooked a little bit wide too. Owen Almighty. So I think they probably would love to trade places with East Avenue, Any of the speed horses probably wish they were drawn right in that 12 spot where East Avenue is.
Because now, granted, like I didn't watch any prep races, but it just kind of seemed to me like the prep races I did watch, the one with Derby points, closers were winning them.
Yep. And that's what we had. Burnham Square won the Bluegrass. He was a deeper closer in the Florida Derby. You had Tapan Street win that, and Sovereignty finished second. They were both horses coming from off the pace. Arkansas Derby, you had Sandman. He was a deep closer. He wins that race. He comes from way, way out of it, and Publisher ran second. He came from way, way out of it in that race. Santa Anita Derby, Journalism. He was a closer, right? He was sitting towards the back of that small field. He was 5th of 5 in that race. So you're spot on. We had a lot of the races kind of set up for horses off the pace, and it does look like, just on paper, it looks again like that could be the case here, where you want a horse that's going to be mid-pack to more off the pace.
There are 2 Japanese horses in the field, Luxor Cafe and Admire Daytona. I personally feel it's only a matter of time before Japan wins a Derby. Do either of these 2 have a chance?
I'm going to use the 7 Luxor Cafe in some spots. Luxor Cafe beat Admire Daytona a couple times, and I like the fact that Luxor Cafe ran 1 1/8 2 different times and looked really good. His best races were when he ran 1 1/8. So I don't think he'll have a problem with the distance. He's won 4 in a row. Of the 2 of them, I like him better. And I do think that you're spot on. That the Japanese contingent are going to win a Kentucky Derby soon. They breed their horses beautifully. They win big races all around the world. And we saw Forever Young almost win the Kentucky Derby last year. If Journalism gets in some traffic trouble, if Journalism doesn't get a chance to run his best race, there might not be a lot of other horses here who are so much better than Luxor Cafe or what he's been facing. This just could be a good spot for him. So I'm going to use him, Erik, in a lot of pick 4s or pick 5s. I think I have him picked 4th. And mainly because it is hard to try to quantify how good the races are in Japan that he was running in. Like, how tough are those horses compared to the horses he's going to be facing in the Derby? That's always tricky. That's always difficult. But he's a wild card, and as long as he is in that like 15-1 range, I think that's a fair price on him in a race where after Journalism, I could see him being right in the mix with the next group of horses.
Now, you mentioned Forever Young. I'm still bitter about last year. Should have won last year, still in my eyes.
Yep, he was getting bumped around by Sierra Leone.
He traveled around a ton.
Yep.
Luxor Cafe hasn't traveled as much, lighter travel schedule. Is that going to help, hurt, or non-factor?
It's a great point, right? And honestly, it for a young horse, it may help that he hasn't had to ship, place, quarantine, ship again, quarantine. Forever Young was going from Japan to Saudi to then Dubai, then had to quarantine before coming into the Kentucky Derby. Wasn't that much travel at all for Luxor Cafe. Maybe he's a little bit fresher right now. Maybe he's got the travel hasn't worn him down quite as much. On the flip side, we could say we kind of knew that Forever Young was a little more battle tested. So he was more of a he was a better chance winner, right, of the race. Like, he was a more logical horse that you kind of felt really good about because you knew more about Forever Young's body of work. But Luxor Cafe could be a really nice price, Erik, and he's going to be in a lot of my pick 4s and pick 5s.
I think it'd be a cool story. 10 years since American Pharoah won the Triple Crown. Now his son, Luxor Cafe, is in the gate. I just think that'd be a cool storyline.
That's what you're pointing out too is very important because Luxor Cafe has been running in Japan, but he's an American bred horse. He's from horses that ran in America, right? So his pedigree and is that of an American style runner. So he does fit really well. And the same thing for the other Japanese horse. Like, that is why the Japan horses run so well. They do great job breeding. Erik, man, you and I talk about football, right? And when you and I talk about football a lot, you were someone who made me realize how important offensive line and defensive line play are. And like, that's the kind of stuff that is like the ground up, right? You need a good GM to find those guys and put the team together. Then you need a good offensive line. It's sort of the same way with racing. Like, they got some really good American stallions and they brought them out to Japan, and they just have incredible breeding operations. The way they train their horses, they really build up the foundation of them. It's just like incredible to see. It's like a well-oiled machine, what they do over there. So I'm just so impressed every time I see the Japanese horses around the world.
Now, talking about some Longshots, Tistastic seems to be flying a little bit under the radar. Looked very sharp, winning the Louisiana Derby. Asmussen was high on him that day. He goes on this podcast, and I'm spacing, of course, now on the name of the podcast, and they always ask him what his lock of the day is. That day of the Louisiana Derby, their podcast, he said Tistastic, who won at 8-1. Could he win? Could he at least hit the board? Throw him in some exotics? Like, what should we do with Tistastic is my question.
Steve Asmussen still looking to win his first Derby. So that would be a huge milestone for one of the all-time great trainers. What I like about Tistastic, his best race came at the farthest distance he's run. So distance is no problem for him. He should be fine at 1.25 miles. He should be fine at any mile, 1/8 mile, quarter, big, like longer races. I don't know if he's quite as good as just like the top tier of horses. Like some of the horses who were in front of him, like Sovereignty, Sandman, Cole Battle, he might not just not be quite as good as them. He might have gone into a prep race that wasn't one of the toughest prep races. Now, it might have been the distance. Maybe just getting more distance helps him. I think he's at least a horse you could use in like the 3rd and the 4th spots.
Now, you mentioned Grande ran behind Rodriguez in the Wood Memorial when nobody could make up ground. If this Derby sets up for mid-back closers, based on what you said earlier, he could be sneaky, but do I play him underneath? Do I include him in my pick 4, pick 5, pick 6 tickets? Like, what's the best angle to capitalize using Grande?
I'm gonna do a few things. I'm gonna bet him to win. If he's like 15-1 or above, that's nice, right? You can play just a few bucks to win on a horse that's that big of a price, and then right off the bat, you'll be in great shape. I think he's the type of horse, Erik, who I will use and I'll bet like trifectas, where I'll play like Grande and Journalism in the top spot in trifectas, and then use horses in the 2nd and 3rd spots. And then you could start throwing in some fun long shots. Like one of the bets that was a suggested wager I gave out in an article I had to do some writing was I had Grande 8 and 10. So Journalism and Grande in the 1st spot for a trifecta. So if one of the two of them wins, I can move to the 2nd spot. And then in the 2nd spot, I had Rodriguez, Luxor Cafe, Journalism, Grande, and Sovereignty. Those are all the horses who I had in the 2nd spot. And then if one of them wins, I could throw in a lot of horses in the 3rd spot. And I played a ticket, I think that was like 42 in the $40 to $50 range for a trifecta. Those are the types of things I'm looking to play. Because it's kind of fun to take a big shot at trying to hit a big wager on Derby Day, right? We know that trifectas or the superfectas pay really well. If you're someone who doesn't look at a lot of the other races before, maybe you don't want to play a pick 4 or pick 5, it is kind of fun to put a few bucks in on a try or a super and throw some really big prices underneath. Like if I hit this trifecta, Erik, and it came in something like Grande winning, and then in the 2nd spot, catching a horse like Rodriguez or Luxor Cafe, That would be really nice. And then in the third spot, I would even have horses like Publisher, who's still a maiden. That's where you would probably throw in Tistastic. You'd throw in, Sandman and Sovereignty. Chunk of Gold, I think, is kind of fun. So I'll set it up to where if I can get Grande or Journalism to win, I'll have a lot of options in the second and third spots.
Now, Coal Battle, great story. Smarty Jones winner, Rebel States winner, third in the Arkansas Derby. His trainer, Lonnie Briley.
Lonnie Briley.
Briley has never entered a graded stakes before. He did with Coal Battle, who's won 2 of them. Could he be this year's Rich Strike, who just kind of came out of nowhere and there was some weather with some wet turf, and we're just like, holy cow, Coal Battle won this, and no one saw this coming.
I mean, he's got a way better shot too on paper than Rich Strike did. For a horse that is probably going to be a pretty big price. Going into the Arkansas Derby, he was only 3-1 in the Arkansas Derby, and he ran third there. He didn't run bad. The only real concern about him is that we don't know how far he wants to go. Like, he may not be a horse who really wants to go as far as the Kentucky Derby is, which is run at 1.25 miles. But what I will say about him, when he wins the Smarty Jones, that was supposed to be the race that was going to be too tough for him. Then he stepped up in the Rebel, and that was supposed to be the race that was going to be too tough for him. And even in the Arkansas Derby, he didn't win, but he wasn't disgraced in that race by finishing third. So every time there's been a test, he's passed that test, and he stepped up and showed that he's competitive and he deserves to be with the top of this group right now. I don't have him in that top tier, but I really respect him, and it would be a fantastic story. There's 2 that are kind of the cool, fun stories. It would be Coal Battle with the connections that you mentioned, and it would be the 19 Chunk of Gold for a smaller trainer, Ethan West, who does a really nice job with his horses. They only paid $2,500 for this horse, Erik, Chunk of Gold, and he's in the Derby. So compared to him, they paid $2,500 for him. Right next door, Owen Almighty, they paid $350,000.
Yeah.
They paid $1.2 million for Sandman. Coal Battle was one of the less expensive horses at $70,000. But most of these horses are $300,000, $500,000, Publisher $600,000, and then you've got the $2,500 Chunk of Gold. It's incredibly impressive that he's even here. He's already won just by getting into the starting gate for the Derby.
I like betting trends in sports. It's one of the things I look at. 7 straight Derby winners have had 3 or more prep races. 20 of the last 29 have had a buyer speed figure of 101 or higher. This year, only Rodriguez and Journalism check those boxes. Does that boost their case, or is this just kind of one of those years, you really can't look at the trends? Because there's so many trends out there, you can always make an argument. But when I see the speed figure thing, and there's only 2 of them that have over 101, that kind of sticks out to me a little bit.
I agree. You can't look past it. And I mean, we're here talking about daily racing form when we're looking at the buyer speed figures. That's a big tool. And I think you want to look for horses who are capable of running a really fast race, or horses who are moving in the right direction. And while my top pick is one of the horses who didn't run that 100, Erik, Grande is not far, and he was behind one of the horses who did in a race where that horse, Rodriguez, got a little bit better of a trip. So I don't think Grande was too far off of running one of those really big figures that you were talking about. So there's a lot of people who have their checklists of, I need to find a horse that does this for the Derby, and running high speed figures in triple digit buyers is one of them.
Now, one strategy you've talked about before when you've come on my podcast is keying the favorite. So playing every horse over Journalism. Do you think that's something we can do again this year? Or if I'm really headstrong that Journalism is going to win, am I better off, instead of just doing a bet on Journalism to win, playing an exacta where it's journalism over everybody else.
And what I would, and if you're gonna do it with like a short price favorite like journalism, what I would probably do would be journalism over all of the big prices, and like I'd cut out maybe like Sandman and Sovereignty and the horses who would probably be like the second, the third, and the fourth choice. You probably want to leave them out, because if it came journalism and then Sandman, not going to pay all that much. But if you're keying in on journalism, you could do like journalism and then throw in a bunch of the big prices, which would be fun. Or like you said, maybe the other way, maybe you throw a bunch of the big prices over journalism, right? Maybe you throw in a lot of the big long shots that you like, and then you put journalism in the second spot. Both of those things are logical. And as you pointed out, we've seen through the years, one big horse in the exacta really spices it up, even if it's a logical winner. So you just want to make sure that you're not necessarily picking all of the favorites in order, because that's where you won't get the best payouts. If you like one favorite to win in the trifecta, maybe in the second spot or third spot, you look for some others that are bigger prices.
Now, I love betting the Oaks Derby double. Where's your head at there?
So Oaks, I think that there's a good amount of speed. Mark Cassie trains the 7 Lacara, and he basically said, we're going to the lead. If anyone else wants to try to come with us, they can, but we're going, which I always love when like, it's like, okay, we know they're going. So I figured they're going to be going pretty fast up front. The horse who I think could get a really good setup in there, Erik, is the 6 Ballerina d'Oro. I actually think I can pull up. So here's the field right here on the graphic I'm showing for the Kentucky Oaks. This is one of our Timeform US graphics right here. I like the 6 a little bit, Ballerina d'Oro. I think she's a closer, and she could get a really, really good setup in this race with like horses like Simply Joking, Lacara, 5G, Anna's Promise, even Quiet Side. They're pretty quick early on. So if they're all battling it out, it might set up nicely for a deeper closer like Ballerina d'Oro. I put Ballerina d'Oro on top. I put Simply Joking second. I went Good Cheer third, and I went Lacara fourth. So my top 4 in the Oaks were 6, 2, 11, 7. I would definitely use combinations of Ballerina d'Oro and Simply Joking. Good Cheer is the horse to beat. If you're playing the doubles, maybe you're looking for horses that offer you a little bit more value. I wouldn't play a double where I went Good Cheer and journalism, because those would be like 2 favorites. So maybe one of the races you kind of pick where you're going to go against the favorite. But I respect Good Cheer, and I had Ballerina d'Oro and Simply Joking along with Lacara as my top horses.
Now, one of the also eligible, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, but Baeza is a bit of a wild card.
Yep.
And fits the pace perspective, might have made the field under the old points system. If he doesn't draw in, the connection study is going to run in the Preakness. The Preakness pool for the futures on ExpressBet closes at 6:00 on Saturday.
That's a great point.
We know if he's in by that point.
Yep.
Am I crazy if he doesn't draw in just to play the 12-1?
Not at all. Well, and in the Preakness pool, he might be higher because he won't be this price. This is what his price will be in the Derby. So by that point, he might be like 15-1 at that point. If he gets in, if he's running in the Preakness, so like if he doesn't make it in the Derby and he's in the Preakness, he's going to be like the second or third choice in that race. Because if he were in the Derby, he would probably be like the 4th or 5th choice in this race. Because Erik, he's run one of the faster races in the field. He almost beat journalism. So if we think journalism is that good, he ran a big race when finishing just behind journalism. You're spot on. I think that's a fantastic idea. If you know by Saturday that Baeza has not gotten in the field, if you liked him a little bit, go put a few bucks on that Preakness future wager on him, because as long as he makes it to the Preakness, you're going to get a better price if you bet that wager than if you wait till Saturday of Preakness Day, a couple weeks from Saturday.
Now, lastly, let's talk about the weather. Looking at the forecast right now, rain Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. How is that going to affect your handicapping?
It's a little bit of a bummer because you can't project as much about like what type, like who's going to stay in. If any horses scratch in the Derby, you probably won't have horses scratch like you would on other days. But I would generally not like the horses have to come from way, way out of it as much. Like I would downgrade horses like Sandman and Sovereignty a little bit more if it became really, really sloppy, because you just get so worried about those horses having to be so far back with mud splashing in their face behind horses who are kind of zigging and zagging and really don't like the slop. So I would generally want to be playing the horses who can be sitting close. I'd probably upgrade a couple of the other speed horses a little bit more too. A horse like I think about Rodriguez. I'd really upgrade even more if it was a sloppy racetrack, because I think he would perform really well in that situation. I think it might help a horse like American Promise. We saw him win. He broke his maiden on a muddy track at Oaklawn Park. So Erik, is one of the proven horses that we've seen on a wet track that we know for sure likes it. A lot of these other horses, we don't even know. They may not like it at all.
Now, when we look at the weather, are there any of the top 5 morning line favorites right now that you're downgrading because of the rain? We talked pretty much.
I think it would be the 2
horses right now. Is there anyone like?
It would be the 17 and the 18. Both of those two, who they might be the second and third choice, Sandman and Sovereignty. I just would like them both a lot less if it was really, really wet. I think they want a fast track, a fair track where a lot of horses are showing good speed early on. In a sloppy track, some of these horses might not even like the wet track. They may not even have a fast break. So maybe the pace isn't even as fast as we thought. Maybe 1 or 2 of the horses gets out front, really likes the sloppy track and just keeps going. I would downgrade those horses if it was really, really wet, both the 17 and the 18.
One last question, and I'm going to throw you on the spot for this one. Hypothetically, I have $50. How should I bet this race?
I think you put a few bucks to win on the 10 Grande. I think you put Grande and Journalism in on top, like I said, in some trifectas. And then however many horses you can include in the second and third spots, you can probably play a ticket for like $30 or $40 in that range where you're using Journalism and Grande. And you need one of them to win. Then you could have like 4 horses in the second spot where you would just need one of them to win. For me, those would be like Rodriguez, Luxor Cafe. I'd have Journalism, Grande, and then the other one for me was Sovereignty. And then if I was right in the first and the second spot, I'd have a chance for a lot of horses in that third spot. So what's great about the Derby and really racing in general, I'm not someone, Erik, you know me, how we bet. I don't bet a lot of money to try to win a lot of money. I bet a little bit of money to try to win a lot of money. I'm trying to find the big prices and the value best that we can. Derby Day is always a really fun day because if you're someone who likes to bet exactas and tries, you can do that. But Erik, you were pointing out the Oaks Derby double. There's races right before the Kentucky Derby that lead you in. You could play a double with the Turf Classic or a pick 3 leading you in. So look around. Find maybe some other races that you like with the Derby too. Maybe you can connect them in a double or a pick 3, and put a few bucks to win on Grande and maybe a trifecta with Grande and Journalism on top.